come into faith. And as I got to understand the significance of this moment, it started to make sense why I didn't hear it as much in the church, because this right here is the beginning of reading the early church in a totally different light. Because I think this is the turning point in the church. Because what we do know is Christianity changed within 100 years from a small Jewish religion into this world multi-ethnic faith. And Luke is clearly showing that this is critical. And I don't have time to go into everything, but those 7 that they picked, the minority, they were the leaders in terms of changing Christianity from a Jewish religion into this multi-ethnic faith. And starting with Stephen, which I'm going to mention him briefly, and Philip. Philip went on to lead the first non-Judah Christ, and he led the first mission. And they got their leadership from this experience. This is how they were elevated. So the point I'm making here is that unless they addressed their discrimination, they weren't able to grow. But once they did, their ministry grew in ways they never thought. And I guess the question that I want to ask for us all today is, what kind of divisions are there among us in this group? And what kind of divisions are there as we look in terms of the broader Christian context at Northwestern and around the world? And some of you guys, I know, and I'm the same way, we're like tempted to say, you know, there's no real discrimination here. We don't discriminate against Korean people, or we don't have this rule that only Chinese people can, you know, I don't know, something. But what I want to say is, and what I believe this passage is telling us very clearly, is that no community is prone to discrimination, okay? No community is prone to discrimination. This community right here is the same community that you read about in Acts chapter 2. And if you are really Christian-y, you might hear the phrase, oh, I want to be an Acts 2:42 community. You know, this idea of, we want to be like that first church who are sharing everything. But this is the community. They were discriminating against each other. And what this story teaches us is that even the first church, where a lot of the leaders knew Jesus personally, they still discriminated against each other. And that makes sense, right? Even if you're not a Christian, if you don't believe in the Bible, you can read social scientists, group psychologists, they say the same thing, that in any group where you have human beings present, or even animals, you have this in-group, out-group, you have the social elites, you have the, you know, and you have ones who adhere to the social norms and those who don't, and there's always the divisions. But what I think the Christian faith tells us, and the example of the first church, is that as Christians we're called to do something differently than what is normal. And let me just say, if you're sitting here saying, I don't think there's a problem, you know, and because maybe, but I hate to break it to you, but maybe that's a sign that you could be part of the problem. Because sometimes not saying anything, just like Esther said, not doing anything, and turning a blind eye is just as much can increase injustice or division. Martin Luther King said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, and I think that's so true. And Paul, I think he got that from Paul, because when Paul says, you know, we're the body of Christ. If one part of the body is hurt, the whole body is hurt. And so that's why it's serious business. And I'm going to spend just a quick moment just talking about some things that I think might be relevant for us as an Asian American Fellowship. In this text, one of the things that I think is interesting is, for a casual, non-Jewish person, you might read this and just be like, oh, they're all Jews. Why don't they just get along? They're all Jews, you know? But the thing is, though, the Bible makes a big deal out of the ethnic differences. So ethnicity meaning your country of origin. That's what ethnicity usually means. Race meaning, you know, you're perceived by your physical appearance or whatever. But the text differentiates between ethnicity. And similarly for us, you know, people might look at us and say, oh, we're all Asian Americans. We're all Asian, you know? But there are huge differences between our ethnicities. And some of you guys might be like, oh no, it's personality, it's our individual personality. But the thing is, and this is my belief, that our individual personalities are large in part shaped by the communities we grew up with. And for many of us here, and I know a lot of you guys, grew up in mono-ethnic communities. So for a lot of us here, we grew up in either all Korean, all Chinese, all Japanese, many of us, not all, and that has a strong impact on the way that we act and our culture. And I'm going to give you one interesting thing that I noticed. So when I was at Northwestern, most of my friends were either Korean or Chinese, and that's by and large the makeup of our fellowship. But the funniest moment, it was funny, this is really funny, was I just talked with my old roommate Sam Yang about this, and our freshman through junior year, we went to this praise night called C6, and if you guys don't know what that is, it's a large gathering of like local churches, and most of them are Korean churches, and it's a praise night, you know, and so a lot of NU students go to that. And I remember our freshman year, because we were just kind of getting to know each other, and our group was about half Korean, half Chinese, and I remember I went there and I loved it. It was like awesome, you know? Like the praise band was rocking, and the pastor was like really like, he was like hit, you know, he was going crazy. And I remember we came back and we were talking about it, you know? I was like, yo, Sam, that was crazy. Sam Chinese, like, that's crazy, you know? And I remember him saying like, what the heck was that, Andy? You know, what the heck was that? And, you know, he was telling me, and every year he'd say this, you know, I meet all of these really mild-mannered Koreans, and they're really nice and just kind of chill, and all of a sudden in worship time they like explode, and he was saying like, you know, when I was there, like I was standing in between like Pastor Mike from Lakeview and Josh Yang, and they were like shaking the floor, and he was like scared, you know, but, for those of you guys who don't know, and I didn't know this, I thought everyone worshiped the way I worshiped in my Korean church, where everyone jumps up and down, you know, and like prays really hard. And for Sam, he was so shocked to be in, and he was kind of taken aback, you know. And another good example is, do you know there's a song like "One Way," da, 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 Jesus, you're the only one. If you hear it in a Korean church, it's like this ska, like no, 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 no. But my friend, he would play it's like "One Way," and obviously, I hope I'm not offending anybody, but that's a generalization. It's a generalization, and I understand that any discussion of culture is a generalization. If to be completely, you know, accurate, we'd have to talk about each individual person. But talking about culture is a generalization that helps us to a point. But the reason why I bring up that distinction is, it's very easy in a group that's either majority Korean or majority Chinese to impose that cultural preference on the other. And that's not the discrimination that we see in Act 6, but it's the same, it can happen the same way, in the sense of, as a Korean guy, if I look at my friend Sam and I see, you know, he doesn't jump up and down and worship. And I did this as a freshman, I'll be honest. I looked around at Camp AAV and like, nobody's raising their hands, you know, what the heck, you know? And my own view of what worship should be like, I impose that on other people. And it was only a cultural view. And the same way, if Sam did that to me, saying, man, it's just, all he's doing is just like, you know, he's like totally being fake, like, because he's not like that in real life, but suddenly when he goes into worship, he like moshes and everything. But here's the thing, and this is where I think the application is very practical for us. It's the trend, the human tendency is to take your cultural views and equate that with the standard. And if this group is a majority Korean, let's say AA is majority Korean, it's very easy for a Korean fellowship to impose that. So that is the way we worship. And likewise, if we're predominantly Chinese, you can impose that type of more like, you know, drawn out worship. But what we learned from Acts chapter 6 is that in every case, the majority was humbling itself to raise up the minority. And I hope you guys can appreciate how much humility that takes for these 12 Hebrew Jews to lay down their power, that these Greek Jews could have leadership, and they actually ended up taking over the church. And I think that is a model for, in terms of multi-ethnicity, that I think can make a statement to the world, where, you know, sometimes I